All right. Good morning, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're joining us. Today, we have a very, very special guest, and of course, someone that I've considered as a colleague, as a friend, and of course, now obviously someone that I really look up to and respect as one of the chief architects of our foreign policy. I hope I'm not putting him into trouble by emphasizing how important his role has been in shaping a national interest, Philippine first foreign policy. Thank you very much again for joining us, Ambassador Romualdez.
Well, thank you very much also, Richard. But you are flattering me too much about being the chief architect. But let me
One of
just say
them.
that perhaps the best word would be I'm a chief advisor, because
Yes.
since I've been around for quite some time, I've uh, I've taken the role perhaps of being an advisor to our current president, and even in the past presidents, and even other presidents in the past. Whenever I'm asked about the relationship, especially with the United States, I've always given my ideas and my thoughts on how we should handle that relationship. And now, of course, being the ambassador there, I think I'm in a better position to see what the tenor or the temperature is as far as Washington is concerned with our relationship right now.
Absolutely, Ambassador. I mean, the reason why I've been emphasizing the role is, first of all, is your proximity to the president as a relative, as someone that he deeply respects, and of course, the fact that you have worked in not one but multiple administration and across different administration, both in the U.S. and Manila. I mean, not many people have occupied the responsibility and space that you have occupied, and therefore, I think you always have a very unique vantage point. We met first during Duterte time, right, and Trump time. Now we're talking under BBM and we're talking under Biden, but who knows? Maybe in few months it's going to be a Trump administration 2.0. We don't know. So you have had that unique vantage point, and I think that's why I deeply respect the kind of perspective you bring in. Ambassador, let's first start giving an overview, just in case yung audience natin. Siyempre, there's the media headline. Both of us come from media. Both of us are journalists. But we know that the world of diplomacy, there's so many layers to that. There's so many complexities that are not captured by media coverage, among other things. First of all, what do you think is the overall state of affairs as far as our relationship is concerned? The term I keep on hearing, Ambassador, is hyperdrive. The Philippine-U.S. alliance is moving into a hyperdrive. What do we mean by that, Ambassador?
Well, hyperdrive basically would probably, to describe it very simply, is that we are now at a situation where both our interests are so much aligned that we have now taken the road of making sure that that relationship becomes even stronger now, because we are looking at the same interests that we're looking at, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. And since the United States has been one of our oldest ally and their only treaty partner in the Indo-Pacific region, in the Asian region, it's only natural for us to now work together. And by that, we also have other countries as well that are joining in because of this relationship that we have with the United States. And I think that this is one way of being able to, most important for now, is the fact that we have a defense strategy that involves having partners like the United States and other countries as well in the region.
Thank you, Ambassador Romualdez, for first of all, sidebar. Let me sidebar that for now. The broader network of allies and partners. We're talking Japan, France, so many others to discuss. The defense minister of Germany was also just in town. So a lot is moving on multiple fronts. But I want to focus first on U.S.-Philippine relations, because you are one of the chief advisors, but your primary job is our ambassador to the U.S. So I think people are interested to know the ambassador to the U.S. perspective on this. So how are all of these things connected? This 2+2, first time in the Philippines. This is the fourth 2+2. Both Blinken and Lloyd Austin were in Manila. $500 million in new defense package. At the same time, you had earlier this year in Washington, D.C., where you serve the trilateral among Philippines, U.S., and Japan, Kishida, Marcos, and Biden. Lots is going on here. And of course, EDCA is also on track to meet its targets in terms of consolidation of those facilities. Are all of these things part of a bigger effort to make sure this alliance is fit for the 21st century, relevant to the challenges we're facing?
Absolutely. The fact that we were able to have this meetings, especially the trilateral summit that was held in Washington, D.C. last April, is a key event that signals on how serious we are in really consolidating our efforts into being to push back not only those that are challenging the stability of the region, but at the same time giving a message to many other countries as well that this is a very serious situation that we're facing, that we cannot allow ourselves to just simply sit down and just allow a country to do what they want and claim an entire territory without having to go through some form of international court, which we did. And so that alone is a very strong signal, the summit that we had last April. And we will continue to have all kinds of meetings, and like the 2+2 that took place here over a week ago is another indication of how strong that alliance is with the United States. And we also had, as you just mentioned, the German minister and other countries that are coming in and asking if we could have the same kind of an arrangement we have with the United States on the visiting forces agreement. As you know, we also signed an agreement with Japan. We have one with Australia, and we hope to have one with Canada. And we may have other countries that are prepared to join us, and like New Zealand also is another country that's very much interested into having some kind of an agreement that will, again, strengthen our relationships and that we are prepared for any situation that we face in the future.
Absolutely, Ambassador. I was actually in New Zealand upon the invitation of their government the other month, and they were so excited about the direction of our foreign policy. And they happen to have a prime minister who served here. I think he was attached to Unilever in Manila, right? So he has been visiting the Philippines for a long time. Lots is going on. Ambassador, there was a $500 million defense package that was announced during the 2+2 meeting between the United States and the Philippines. Obviously, this is the biggest ever on record. I'm sure you did a great job during the Duterte administration and all, but this is bigger than ever. Usually we're looking at 70 to 100 million FMF. But again, I'm sure there's a lot of disinformation out there or misunderstanding. What is this package all about? Because part of that is also about the EDCA facilities, if I'm not mistaken. Some of that is also for modernization of our Coast Guard in addition to AFP. What is a breakdown? Can we deconstruct that for the purpose of audience who may not follow this clearly?
Well, first of all, this is totally separate from the EDCA budget.
So it's totally separate. Again, clarification. Thank you for that.
$128 million just for the EDCA sites. This is to improve many of the places that we've already agreed on, especially the 9. But this will be more on the additional 4 that was just granted to the United States for the EDCA. The 500 million is a large portion of that is obviously going to go to our Coast Guard and to the AFP modernization, and also prepare. We have a USOMIA, which is basically an agreement on the security arrangement with the United States.
This and intelligence. And intelligence.
Yeah. So we have to be able to upgrade our entire system to be able to fit into the United States system also, so that we can now prepare this for the additional funds that will be coming in. Let me tell you, Richard, that what is being programmed, or what's being now discussed thoroughly by our friends in the U.S. Congress, and where we have a very strong bipartisan support from both the Republicans and Democrats, is that we probably will be getting $500 million a year for the next 4 to 5 years. This is
2.5 billion. So we're looking at $2.5 billion.
2.5 billion, or a total of maybe about 3 billion all in all. And that this is only part of what we are trying to do. But I think what's important to note here is that our AFP now will have the opportunity to be able to modernize our armed forces much faster than we had planned to. In other words, the 10-year program will probably be shortened by another 3 to 5 years into making it modern and strong enough to be able to defend ourselves for any conflict in the future. This is very important for us, and I think that President Marcos, like I said, has made a great stride in making sure that that kind of defense strategy will work for us, and couldn't be better that we have it now at this time.
Thank you for the clarification again, because I've seen some back and forth on whether the EDCA upgrades kasama dyan sa budget na yan, and that this is a 5-year project we're looking at, so a multi-billion-dollar defense aid. Again, the biggest ever given to any Indo-Pacific partner, if I'm not mistaken, also biggest ever to the Philippines, obviously. But Ambassador, again, I want to ask you about this because you were also there during the Duterte administration. So these conversations about us acquiring American fighter jets, because one of our problems is that we still do not have a proper fighter jet. No offense to FA-50s, but these are upgraded Korean trainer jets. How are those conversations going? Because my understanding is cost was always a concern. That's why we're considering the Swedish counterpart. I'm not military expert, but from the little I know, I would always choose the American version, either F-15 or F-16, because of the track record that they have and interoperability with their NATO allies. To the degree that you can share with us, are we also looking at acquiring some of the more advanced American weapon systems as we level up our armed forces capabilities?
Well, I think our armed forces have already come out with a program that will now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Secretary Teodoro has already instructed his staff to be able to come out with a program to consume that 2.5 billion within the next within the next 5 years, which will include fighter jets that you mentioned. Now, on the question of the F-16, obviously the F-16 is the one that our Air Force really wants, and it is the most reliable of all. It's been around for a very long time. The problem, though, that will always be put into question, which I think is also a concern of the president, is the maintenance and upkeep of this F-16. So it's important that this package is easy to buy, but to maintain it and keep it in good condition for at least another 10 years, the minimum, is what's important, and how much will that cost us. So these are being studied very carefully by our armed forces logistics and procurement people, and I'm sure that they'll come out with a good mix of whether we can have F-16s or Griffins as part of the whole package of what we need for our Air Force. But there are many other things that we need, actually. To be honest about it, if we really want to be up to that certain level, we need much more than what we're getting from the FMF. But the good news is we're also programming like the Horizon 2, 3, and 4, and whatever it is. I think our own legislative branch has come out with some programs to be able to fund many of the requirements of our armed forces to bring it up to speed also. So we're not just dependent on the United States. We're also using our own resources. And other countries also, by the way, are prepared to help us and to be, like I said, interoperability of all the like-minded countries is very important at this time, to modernize ourselves and be ready for any situation that we face in the future.
Thank you for the clarification. I definitely agree with you. I mean, talking to people from military background, Admiral Ong is someone we regularly have also on our show where we discuss this technical military aspect. So I appreciate that. Obviously, you're the diplomat here. You're one of the most diplomats out there overseeing this relationship and our broader foreign policy. The reason I talk about the F-16 and all of that is, of course, Ambassador, you understand, you're also a journalist, symbolism, right? I mean, it's really something when you have a kind of a really storied weapon systems from a key ally with you on very favorable terms, if I could say. I think it says a lot. Let's just be honest, it makes our job also easier to push back against, for the lack of better term, pro-China proxies in the Philippines. So keep on saying, oh, wala naman na pala itong relationship na to. Oh, look at this, look at that. So I just felt I wanted to talk about that because symbolism is big also when it comes to alliances and pushing back against propaganda, China propaganda.
Well, there's no question about it. But, you and I know, and I think a lot of people know, that we will be seeing a lot of changes in the way things are moving in the right direction. As I said, the ironclad commitment of the United States on the Mutual Defense Treaty is not only relevant today, but it is more realistic and true more than ever because our mutual interest is at stake. In other words, we have the same interest into being able to put ourselves together, into being really a partner in trying to stabilize the region. So we will be seeing that, and all those naysayers and all of those that are saying all kinds of things, they will see that they're totally wrong in their way of thinking. I just hope that it is only because they're wrong, but they're not seeing the propaganda tune of the other countries. Excuse me.
You want to grab a bottle of water? No, thank you for that clarification. That was extremely important. And please continue to take care of yourself. This is going to be a long 2 or 3 years. A lot is going to happen in DC in the coming months, and also in our bilateral relationship. May I ask you also, Ambassador, about the West Philippines situation? I saw a footage of three of you with former Ambassador and Secretary Manalo and also Secretary Gibo Chodor. Parang sabay-sabay pa nagsasalitan last. I said, you know what? I'm gonna ask separately, Ambassador, also about this. What do you think about the state of affair in the West Philippines right now, especially over the Ayungin Shoal? My understanding is that if it's the skeletal reinforcement, okay na tayo, nagawa natin yung reinforcement na kailangan natin. But nevertheless, there's been a lot of Chinese propaganda around itong I don't know, interim agreement na meron tayo na they're essentially implying we're getting their permission before we supply there, which is the kind of reaffirmation of their nonsensical supposed sovereign claim. Can you clarify what's going on right now in Ayungin Shoal in terms of us holding the line and making those lines very clear to China, Ambassador?
Well, I think I can only tell you what is already known publicly. That there is an agreement, yes. Whatever the messaging coming from other country, from China, we have our own messaging, and we know which one is true and which one is not. So, but at the end of the day, the most important effect of that is that we have de-escalated the situation in the Ayungin Shoal, which is very important, not only for ourselves, but perhaps also for China. I think that they too want to de-escalate it. So whatever interpretation they would like to make is something that we have absolutely no control of. But we know that this is what we need to do to be able to do the humanitarian supply of our soldiers that are based at the Sierra Madre. And at the same time, it is also, we have not changed our position that it is ours. And China, I suppose, has not changed its position that everything that they claim is theirs, which is the 10-dash line, is what it is. And that's just something that we just have to face or accept that that's the current situation that we have right now. Now, what we're trying to do now, to be honest about it, Richard, is that we are trying to move in a way that we are just trying to, let's put it this way, we don't want to escalate, but we don't want to change our position, but we don't want to just concentrate on just looking at this as the main issue. The issue here is very simple. The issue is territorial integrity of the Republic of the Philippines. And that is what we are guarding against. And we will continue to do what we have to do. As President Marcos even pointed out very clearly, if they just leave us alone, if they just don't, it's an aspiration that don't claim any of what is really rightfully ours, then we have no problem. We don't need to have EDCA sites. We don't have any of these things. We can have a relationship with the United States. We can have a relationship with China. But that's an aspiration, and that is not something that what we're facing today. And so we just have to be realistic that we have a situation where we have to be prepared for any eventuality, but at the same time, always bear in mind that we want to always resolve things peacefully and as peacefully as we can. And that's why that agreement that we have is something that we have worked on, and it was really the Philippines that has taken the initiative as far as de-escalating this situation.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I think I always remind our friends, whether in China and other places, that whatever we're doing is purely defensive, and also to make sure we have a sufficient balance of power. Otherwise, there's no point in diplomacy if it's from a position of surrender, right? Diplomacy from a position of weakness is not diplomacy. I think we keep on hearing we need diplomacy, but it has to be from a position of relative strength, right?
Of course. But diplomacy is always been the tool that any country would like to use in any form. But we have a population in this country that 90% of which really they can very clearly see where we need to be and what we need to do. Now, really, if there are still other people in our country that could continue to think otherwise, then there's not much we can do. I just hope that they're just thinking in a wrong way, and as I said, they're not singing a tune for some other reason.
It's just a divergence of opinion rather than divergence of personal interest or personal
I
account
hope.
interest.
I'm hoping that that's the case.
Ambassador, there was one thing I also emphasize very much here, as we transition into part of, because my entire point is about this is strategic agency of the Philippines rather than alignment with anyone, right? But before we go there, I want to also emphasize, and this is actually reflective of that sensibility. We turned down the help from the U.S. according to General Bronner during one of the most tense moments in the RORE missions to Ayungin Shoal. For him to come out and say that, I felt it was important, right, to remind the world and our ASEAN partners that this is fundamentally a Filipino effort to defend Filipino sovereign rights. It just happens we have important and good allies, right?
Well, again, these are operational decisions that have to be made by our AFP. And again, following the policy that we have, that we always try our best, never to go on the offensive, so to speak, but more just to really defend what is rightfully the correct thing to do. And I think that General Bronner's decision was correct in that sense, because if we had escalated it into bringing in or calling in our partners, specifically invoking the Mutual Defense Treaty, then you bring the level of conflict to something that we are not prepared to do so at this time. And I certainly hope that it will never have to come to pass. But as I said, we always have to be ready for the worst. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing right now. I always say that the silver lining in any cloud is the fact that now more than ever, we seriously are doing what we can to bump up our armed forces into really a credible defense force. And that's very, I would think that many Filipinos will take comfort in the fact that we are seriously doing this, and the administration of President Marcos intends to finish this by the year 2028 when he steps down.
Thank you for that. I mean, we have a couple of viewers joining us from California and Florida, different time zones. So some are sipping their coffee and getting excited about our discussion as we speak. Ambassador, I want to go back to the idea of mutual defense treaty. My sense is there's a lot of mystification around that, because this is a mutual defense, not a mutual offense. And there are many steps before military interventions happen. I think a lot of people are making too much out of this, or pointing MDT as if it's a kind of a Cold War aggressive move. I mean, if you look at you must step by step, you take it to United Nations, there will be consultations, it has to go through constitutional processes. It doesn't mean when you say invoking MDT that let's go to war with China, right?
Well, I don't know exactly whatever the process will be.
The operational ladder is.
Okay, whatever you want to call it. But the bottom line is that Mutual Defense Treaty was signed in 1951. This is right after of course, the World War II, and I think at that time the Korean War. So it was in our interest that we have that kind of an agreement with the United States. After all, they were our partners for many years. We were under the United States. Our armed forces was actually started by the United States to a certain extent, and we're trained. And we have many soldiers that have, or we have many of our officers that have gone to West Point, Annapolis, and many other institutions in the United States. So it's only natural, again, for us to have that kind of an agreement, the Mutual Defense Treaty. Invoking the Mutual Defense Treaty, which now they say is an ironclad commitment. I think that on many occasions, President Biden, Secretary Blinken, and Secretary Austin have said that any kind of, and even the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, has said that any kind of aggressive behavior coming from any country, particularly China, could mean invoking the Mutual Defense Treaty, of which the United States will come in to help defend the Philippines. So that's very clear. So if we feel that it's time for us to call them in, we will do so if we need be. But again, as I said, bringing another country where we can still handle the situation is always the best way, and that is what President Marcos has clearly stated, that this is a Filipino territory, and we will do it on our own for as long as we can. Uh, and also, what's important here is now it's not only the United States that is coming, joining us. It's many countries from Europe, from the Asian region, of course, in Japan. As you know, we have a very strong uh, agreement right now with Japan to be able to now stabilize the Indo-Pacific region. So that's why, you know, a couple of years ago, to be honest about it, uh, many people like me had sleepless nights because we were defenseless. But now I feel comfort in the fact that we have something, to back us up, so to speak. And I'm even more excited the fact that our own armed forces is now getting into that situation where we can really depend on them. And I
Absolutely.
think every Filipino should be proud of the fact that we've been able to achieve this in a very short time, and we will be able to achieve that level of defense, a credible defense posture in no time.
Absolutely. And I think we're going even beyond minimum, right? We want to have really a comprehensive 21st century armed forces. There's just a last one, Ambassador, on the US part before we go to the favorite part, which is this network of alliances and partnerships, starting with Japan and New Zealand, among others. I just want to ask about this. You had a very memorable quote on Nikkei Asia, whereby you said that you know the frontline state is the Philippines, and the Third World War could start really in South China Sea, not Taiwan. But nevertheless, Taiwan is relevant, right? And some of these EDCA bases are not necessarily facing Taiwan. We can argue that Cagayan is also facing the Pacific Ocean, not necessarily Taiwan. But nevertheless, some of our sites, EDCA sites, being in the northern parts of the Philippines, inevitably raises the question of how are we going to approach the Taiwan question. The reason I'm asking you this is that President Marcos Jr. has correctly been hedging on this in the sense that he's saying that this is not for offensive purposes, but nevertheless, he has also clarified. I mean, he comes from the north of the country. I come also from the north of the country. I know how close Taiwan is to us. It's almost impossible to be neutral if something goes south, as far as our northern neighbor is concerned. Can you clarify to us, Ambassador, to what degree is the Taiwan question shaping our relationship with the U.S.? And then from there, we can go to Japan and other countries.
Well, Taiwan, of course, is we continue to follow our line that we have a one China policy. Our main interest with Taiwan, really, to be honest about it, we have, of course, economic relations with Taiwan, but more importantly, we have close to 200,000 workers. That is a major concern for us. And we want to make sure that those workers will be amply protected or will be evacuated if there's any situation that happens in that area. But we all know that if there is a major conflict in Taiwan, inevitably it will spread to the region, and that's why, because we are centered in that situation where Taiwan is 600 miles away from the Philippines, the northern part of the Philippines, and Japan, of course, is also another country that is also concerned about that situation, and so these are the two countries that are very much focused on what happens to Taiwan can very well affect us. And so the conflict can very easily spread out to our region. And that is why we are still pushing very hard that while we believe in the one China policy, a peaceful resolution of the Taiwan issue is the only way. Because if there is a military movement that is made to take over Taiwan, I think that's going to be really a disaster for the world, because it will start something that we don't want to ever happen. And why I keep reminding people how serious the situation is. If we go back to history in World War II, we all know how that went, and it took an atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which Prime Minister Kishida mentioned many times at the U.S. Congress when he spoke there, when he went on a state visit around the time that we had the summit, because he is from Hiroshima, and he knows what it is like to have something like that ever happen. Because up to this day, he knows of people and relatives who are still suffering from that atomic bomb that was dropped in Hiroshima. And that is a reminder to people that
And he
that's,
comes from Hiroshima. I think he comes
yeah,
from Hiroshima too. Yeah, yeah.
he comes from Hiroshima, yes. So that's why he knows. It is a reminder for people that what we're facing is something that we all do not even want to think that it can. But it can happen because we have now countries like the United States, China, and Russia, and other countries that are developing nuclear weapons. And it can really spell the end of the world. And we don't want that. I think any rightful thinking person will not want something like that to happen.
To what degree, again, maybe I should ask Secretary Gibbon this, but to what degree should we be part of the deterrence, or we should think at least being part of deterring a conflict in Taiwan as a U.S. treaty ally?
Well, I think the deterrence is more really for our interest because we want to prepare ourselves that no country can simply take over. You know, again, we have to go back to World War II. I mean, while Japan is now one of our strongest allies and partners, we were at one time at war with Japan, and we were under Japanese occupation for many years at that time. So we don't want that to ever happen to us again. That we have another country occupy us. We certainly don't want that to ever happen because we know from the stories that we hear from our parents of how it was during the Japanese occupation. So again, we have to always think about the past because that is where we learn from history. We should never forget what happened in the past, and we should ever try to avoid letting that ever happen again. But unfortunately, this time around, it's not just probably occupation, it can mean the annihilation of humankind.
Because of the weapon systems we're looking at. Last one in the U.S. Philippine relations. I mean, you talk about the importance of the past, and what happened during the Second World War is something my Lola was celebrating her birthday soon. Always talks about when when Ilocos region was invaded by Imperial Japanese forces and they're liberated. But we want to also talk about the future, and one of the candidates in elections in the U.S. is someone I think was born boomer itong mga to, diba? So you said bipartisanship, and I absolutely agree with you. I've talked to people from both sides, whether it's Elbridge Colby on the Republican side to all the way to Eli Ratner, who are on the other side and working already in the Biden administration. So I've had conversation with all of them, and I think all of us more or less understand China is the primary threat to the liberal international order and U.S. leadership in this part of the world. Do you see any difference? Because obviously relationships are also about cadence and personal relationship. Do you see any difference if ever another Trump comes to power, or if Kamala isn't? Do you see any major departure from the status quo? If ever, in what sense would it be consequential? And in what sense it will be not? How is Marcos going to deal with that? I mean, again, you are Romualdez. You know the Marcos is very well. From what I understand, Marcos has had good relationship with Trump back in the day, the whole Manhattan days. Imelda, and Trump, there are all of these pictures of them partying back in the day. So I don't think on a personal level, Marcos Jr. will have any problem dealing with Trump, right?
No, I think first and foremost, remember that. Well, of course, I was the ambassador in 2017. I presented my credentials to President Trump, and we've had good relations. President Trump actually got along well with then former President Duterte. Because he was here during the ASEAN summit or the ASEAN meetings that took place in November of 2017. But more importantly, I think the policy that was made then, not only by President Trump but by the Republican Party as well, they've always been they always believed in that kind of thinking about pushing back on and having allies as their partners. Except with President Trump, an allied partner must be able to play a role. And that is why, for some reason, this is exactly what I've been saying to our friends in the US Congress, that I do not go to the US Congress to put my hand this way. And I don't know if you can see it in your cameras, but I don't put my hand out this way. it's more this way that we are partners. I'm here because we need to work together for our own interests. And so our Republican friends have been very, very appreciative of that. In fact, when I had a meeting with Lindsey Graham, one of the very, very strong supporters of President Trump, a senator from South Carolina, he liked that. He liked that very much, and he said that that's exactly what we'd like to hear. That we would like to help our partners like the Philippines, but you do your part also in being a real partner, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing, whether there is a Republican or a Democrat sitting at the White House.
Right. I think even from J.D. Vance, we heard very strong statements on China. Also from other stalwarts in the Republican Party. Just a tiny note on this. What about on the trade front? Because Trump has promised to impose 60% tariffs on China and 10% across the board. Isn't that going to hurt the Philippines? And weren't we supposed to have a bilateral free trade agreement with them? In terms of economic relationship with the US, how do you see that going, Ambassador?
Well, again, it's a matter of being able to navigate that road on the economic issues. Again, it has to be mutually beneficial for both countries, and that's what I think the Republicans are all about, especially perhaps if President Trump does go back to the White House. It has to be a win-win situation. What we're doing is we're offering the Philippines as a good place, for instance, on the semiconductor industry. We are a trusted partner right now. There's a lot of these semiconductor companies that are moving out of China, and they're moving into the Asian region. We are offering ourselves as a partner, as a trusted partner, that we can very well be the ones that can catch many of that and export it to the United States. To give you an example, this has happened during the Trump administration during the height of the pandemic. 3M, the one that produces the masks and also the PEs for the health workers, or the nurses and the doctors, they were producing this in China. For some reason, well, China at that time did not allow the export of these very important items during the height of the pandemic. The United States learned then, and the administration of President Trump learned then, that we cannot allow the supply chains to be controlled by a country that could very well. And it was actually Vietnam that came into the picture and supplied some of these things that were required very much at that time by the health workers in the United States. So in the same token, the important microchips and all of these things that are being produced, they're all moving out, and they're moving into the Asian region and going to trusted partners. And we are one of those. We are one of 7 countries that have been chosen by the U.S. State Department.
I was actually in Tokyo earlier this year, and we had conversations with our friends, trilateral, no, and they were saying very emphatic. Our American partners were that the trilateral they're doing with the Philippines, we want to make sure it's not like 2 developed countries and a junior partner. No, this will be as equilateral and mutually respectable as possible, and they respect what the Philippines brings to the table. I come from Baguio. We have been making Texas Instruments forever, so I always had very high regards for our ability to be part of a very high quality, important component of what made flights possible for all of us. It comes from Baguio, Texas Instruments. Is this also what the Subic economic corridor, Subic-Clark economic corridor, all about during the trilateral summit, Kishida, Marcos, and Biden? Because honestly, I'm very excited about semicon. That's why I discuss all the time. And even the Taiwanese are hoping that they could also help the Philippines to be a more important part of at least packaging and design, if not eventually fabrication of increasingly sophisticated semiconductors.
Yes, definitely. No, we were working with Taiwan as far as the semiconductor. You mentioned about the Luzon corridor.
The corridor, yeah.
Yes, that is a very important part of the development project that the United States is giving to the Philippines, together with Japan. I think they've discussed with Japan to be part of that, the development of that area. That's a very big project that would very much involve that whole corridor, and the development in that region is going to be it's like it's going to boom, so to speak. And that's why, a lot of real estate developers are already looking at that area as one of the prime areas where they would like to start. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's a boom. So many are now coming in there, buying up as much land as they can. Hopefully, they're not going to be touching many of the agricultural land.
Indigenous and agricultural, yeah.
Yes. So, well, that's already for our government to handle. But at the end of the day, that gives you an indication of what kind of development projects that are pouring into the country. And it's not true what they're saying, that there's nothing. There was no significant benefit that was given to the Philippines with all the trips of the president. I still think that all of the trips that the president has taken is well worth it, because number one, he is Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Everybody wanted to know him or get to know him, many of the leaders all over the world. And secondly, the stand that he has taken. I mean, everybody was expecting him to do something else. But the foreign policy that the president has taken is very, very much well known all over the world, that they want to meet him. Up to this day, Canada is still waiting for the president to accept the invitation. He has accepted the invitation for a state visit in Canada, but it's a question of the timing. But they're very eager to see him, actually. The Canadian Prime Minister has been wanting to set a date for that state visit. But I don't blame President Marcos, because not only does he have to attend to so many other things, but of course the domestic issues is also very important, perhaps even more important than anything else. That's why all those trips that they've taken in the first 2 years was important. But now he's managing it and trying to space it out in such a way that it will not take too much of his time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the last part of our discussion, but the most important, you mentioned Canada. I was in Berlin with Chancellor Scholz earlier this year, and he was very happy with his meeting with Marcos Jr. I was very impressed. I hear many positive things about him, also from Auckland, Wellington, when I was there the other month. So I agree with you. Mabango ang Pilipinas, and then obviously, we can have a long conversation about the Marcos and history and all of that. But the state of affairs right now is that the Philippines is seen as a responsible stakeholder. But more importantly, we're seen as a kind of a emergent, if not rising, middle power. Kind of a country that wants to stand on its 2 feet and to project influence. What is a Philippine first foreign policy, in a sense that how is this relatable to this RRA we just signed with Japan, the one we're going to sign with New Zealand, the one we're going to sign with Canada, and the French are also in the wings? What is this all about, Ambassador? I think this is something you kept on mentioning a while ago, but now let's flesh this out.
Well, very simply, our geographical location is what tells it all. It defines what our foreign policies are about. We're a country now more than ever that plays a major role in the political stability of this region. We're right in the center. This has been the line that has been said so many times. In fact, it was the mother of Ferdinand Marcos Jr. that used to always say that we are right in the center. We're not only the pearl of the Orient, but I forgot the name of the
pivot of history style stuff in a second.
But but again, it's a destiny, so to speak. With what is the situation now, and the political stability, or the stability of the region, is very important. We are playing that role right now. So the geopolitical situation that we're facing right now brings us why it is very important for many countries, like-minded countries, to see the Philippines to be a strong country that will be able to withstand any kind of coercion, either militarily or economic-wise. And that's the reason why we're at the center of all of this. And this is, you may want to call it, it's pure luck. That's what God gave us. They gave us the archipelago that we are living in today. It's a major player in the region, and we should take advantage of that, instead of crying and saying, why are we doing this? Why is everybody doing this? But the fact of the matter is, we have a role to play, and the role that we are going to play is to make sure that there's a balance and that stability in the region is a role that the Philippines has already decided to take the initiative, and that we are going to use it for the good of mankind. At the same time, which is very, very important for us, is the economic part of it. President Marcos' main objective of this whole exercise boils down to economic prosperity, because it means economic security for the region. And economic prosperity for our people is obviously the best thing that can ever happen. And I think that, I'll tell you, Richard, I am so convinced that that the next generation of Filipinos will be at that level. We are already there, so to speak. And then now with all of these gold medals that we've been getting, parang nandyan na eh. All
Golden
the
era nga after all.
golden era talaga. I mean, it's all coming into play. And I think that we're being awarded, we're being rewarded for all the sacrifice that we've done for the world with our OFWs. Our OFWs are very well respected and very much appreciated all over the world. And now we are being given this reward that we play a role in regional stability, at the same time giving economic prosperity to our people. And I think that that's going to be the best thing that can ever happen to us.
Ambassador, last point. How do you think the Philippines? What are the elements that have to come together for us to step up to the plate? Do you think we need a whole of nation approach? I think if there's one thing that is coming out over the past year or two is that the West Philippines issue is showing how much we have in common. Hindi ko na alam dun sa 3% na iba yung paningin sa West Philippines na ayaw mag-criticize sa China. But more than 90% of the Filipinos want a tough stance. A lot of people I know who are very critical of your cousin, the president, Marcos Jr., are now saying, well, the guy's not doing anything wrong, at least on the foreign policy. What is there to complain? We have to support this guy. He's our president. So it looks like a kind of a new unity is coming together, whereby more than 90% of Filipinos are seeing the righteousness of the struggle for the country. And I think President Marcos Jr. has correctly emphasized this is not about taking sides between US or China. This is about our national dignity and territorial integrity. What is that whole of nation approach? How does it look to you, Ambassador? How do you think we can all work together? I mean, this podcast in a way is a whole of nation approach. I'm an independent journalist and academic. You are working in the government and also a journalist. But I think both of us see the value of this discussion and pushing the envelope. What do you see along those lines, Ambassador?
Well, the whole of nation is very simple, really. Richard, I've been around for a very long time. I've been, obviously much older than most of you. But you see, I have never looked at the political color as the reason why we want to do what we're doing for the country. For me, it doesn't matter. I have dealt with the father of President Marcos Jr., obviously, because I was a news reporter then, and I was doing my job, and I supported that administration of President Marcos Sr. in my own way. And then from there, when EDSA took place, I was one of the supporters of Vice President Doyle Laurel. I helped him in Washington, D.C. During that time when he was the vice president. And then when we had President FBR, the late President FBR, I joined many of his business delegations. In other words, what I'm saying is it doesn't matter to me who it is who is up there. If he's elected, duly elected by the majority of people, or he was elected without any cheating whatsoever, and he's the rightful leader of the country, I'm there. And that's what many Filipinos should look at. You should look at, we have a democratic system. So if we have a leader that's been elected by the majority of the people, then we support them. And President Marcos Jr. received 31 million votes. He was elected by the majority of people. and he's doing what's right. And I can tell you that if there's anybody who can have, if President Duterte had some ill feelings towards the United States, I can tell you that President Marcos Jr. has much more if he's going to take that into account because of what happened in
Like they throw
1986.
each other under the bus kind of
Well,
narrative.
basically, they were, during that time, and I witnessed it. I saw exactly what happened during that time. But he's not, he has always said that I will do what is best for the national interest of the country. And that's the way a Filipino should think. Because we have only one country. Wala naman tayong pupuntahan na iba eh. And all of those people who have migrated abroad, I always tell them, never, never burn your bridges because uuwi ka rin or you, at the very least, you will want to go home and visit your own country. Because the color of your skin will never change. And that is what I keep telling everybody, that we have only one country. We should love our country no matter what it is. We can have all kinds of characters here in this country, but mas marami pa rin tayo that love this country. That's what's important. And if you love this country, you don't look at political color, you don't look at because you have a certain personal ill feelings towards anyone. And President Marcos Jr. is precisely showing the way. He can very well be a person who has a lot of bitterness in him, and he'll start looking for ways and means to get back. You know, I'll tell you, with what's happening right now politically, if he had if it was all personal in his part, he would probably be doing things to bring in, let's say, the International Court, the ICC. But he believes that we're a sovereign country, and the right thing to do is that we should have our justice system takes its course. So things like this, nothing personal is what is important.
He's not vindictive. That's what you're saying, Ambassador. He's not vindictive, and he's not personalizing this. The reason I emphasize this, you also serve under Duterte, who always brought these emotions into the picture in one way or another.
But no, but vindictiveness is what destroys you. If
Mm.
you are bitter, even in your own personal life, if you are a bitter person, I can guarantee you will never move on in life. You will always have the chip on your shoulder, and you can never become what you want. You have to learn how to be to above it all, so to speak, and always look at the higher road. What is best for the country is good for yourself, not what is good for myself. And the hell with everybody. I can guarantee you, a lot of people who thought that way, where are they now? Is what I can say. So that's the way to think. And I'm not saying this because I'm here now in Washington as the ambassador. I'm saying this because this is what I've been practiced all my life.
Yeah.
I've done this, from the day I was born. I guess that's just the way it is. That's why even in the simple thing like the strong rivalry between two major schools, I went to both schools, so now I have friends on both sides. I don't take anything personal. For me, if LaSalle wins,
you're wearing blue right now, but there's enough green in the
yeah,
background.
well, I can have green too, So
There's a
well,
green in their background.
that's right. So ganun yan eh. That's the way to think. Filipino pa rin tayo, and that's the bottom line. That's, you love your country, you love yourself, and then you do what's good for the world.
I absolutely agree with it. Where a number of people are following us who are Filipino Americans or Filipino Europeans or married to foreigners, and yet you can see they care about. They bother to listen to our discussion about nitty-gritties of our foreign policy. Singit ko na ito, super last point na ito. What is your understanding of President Marcos Jr.'s evolution in terms of warming up the seat and coming to terms with the responsibilities? Because I can imagine it's quite overwhelming to see the Philippines at the center of so many things happening. And yet he seems to be very sang-froid, very, very nonchalant, right? He seems to be very effortless about this, seamless about it. Is this because of his background, his history, and also having good advisors like you, maybe, and maybe reading the rest of us once in a while?
One thing that I can tell you about President Marcos is that Bongit is what we call him. He really, number one, he he studies issues and looks at it very carefully before he makes decisions. He was born under the Virgo sign, which is basically a perfectionist. He will never do anything haphazardly. He will try to do it as well as he could. And what's important for him really is the fact that he was born into this world this way. He in the beginning he wanted to just become a businessman, but fate wouldn't allow him to do that, and so he is into politics. He was born under that, and the fact that he saw his father at the front line, and he saw what happened, and perhaps learning from whatever mistakes that were made, but at the same time learning from many things that I think his father had, the vision that his father had. All that put together is what makes him what he is today. And I sincerely think that, not that because of the fact that I'm related to him, but I think he will become a very good president that is of consequence, and that will define what kind of a country we are. It is his time. This is his time that he'll be able to prove. And people who say that he's trying to revise history, he's not. He is writing his own history, and let history be the judge of what the Marcos family was all about. And I think that in the end, I think they will see that he has turned out to be a fairly good president. Okay, we don't want to say a great president, because a great president is only comes when historians really look at it in a different light. It's too early to call anyone a great president. A great president only means that he has done something really of great consequence, that it will remain as part of what happens in the world for a very long time. But I'm pretty sure he will come out to be a fairly good president.
Writing is his own history. I mean, that's a very good way of putting it. Journalist to the core, Parin Ambassador. Still, you got that literary touch. And I said, I look forward to your memoirs and book also down the road about all of these things that you've been through. I'm a Pisces, so sometimes I can get spicy and all of that, but I give credit. I give due credit, including to you, Ambassador. We have some of the audience here who recognize your instrumental role in getting us millions of high-quality Moderna vaccines back in the day under the most difficult conditions. Maraming salamat sa'yo. Mabuhay ka. Mabuhay to our Olympians who are bringing gold, but also mabuhay to you and all patriots who are serving the country, transcending politics and colors. Maraming salamat, Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you to Richard. Always good to see you. Thank you.
Pleasure. My pleasure. Have a good day and take care of yourself, please. Wag masyadong pagod. I can see that you're very busy. God bless you.
Okay.